Red Bulls. Activate. Who is Pierce? What do you want, Pierce? Hello. You got 10 seconds. You're sitting in the disagreement room. I haven't even started talking yet. Good one, dude. Oh, there he is. What? What? That's what you sound like. So I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. How you doing? Okay. Good one. My hair is. Oh no, he tried to zoomer me up, but I f***ed up. I just need to wash my hair. I don't care. I'll figure it out. Would you rather have a goat or a penguin as a pet? I think I'd rather have a penguin because penguins can kill. Penguins can murder, mother. I grinded this for 2 hours last night so I could leave this godforsaken planet. Paradise interview of Pierre. Oh, is there? Did you go from on alopecia steroids? No, all the hair is there. It's just I'm waiting for it to turn the right color. Some of it has. Wait, like apparently the hairs grow in stages. They start with like vellus hairs or something. I don't know what the fuck they're called. And then they turn into, the final thing is called terminus hairs or something. So I don't know. They'll get there eventually. And the everyday Hassan molts and he loses his hair, I gain some from him. Why are some of the pistols missing? I went shooting a while ago. I just haven't cleaned them yet.
This is a special.
Oh my god, I picked up my rifle today though. The guy let me just walk out with it. I don't know if I think he might have just as soon I have a concealed carry because I've been to that store a few times. But I looked at him and was like, "Are you sure?" And he was like, "Just don't let them find the body." So I don't even know if he knew why I was asking if he was sure. And I just walked out. Hell yeah.
This is a special bonus episode of The Knowledge Project featuring Pierre Poilievre, the
Do you use a derma roller? No, I ain't got time for all that bullshit.
leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and leader of the official opposition. I've always avoided politics on the platform, but lately I've been frustrated, not as a partisan, but as a citizen. Political conversations around the world have become nothing but angry sound bites and gotcha moments. We've lost the ability to explore complex issues with nuance and good faith.
Oh boy.
This isn't just a Canadian problem, it's happening everywhere. So I decided to do something about it, even if it's just a small step. With that in mind, I've invited both of the leading candidates to the Canadian election on the show. They've both said yes, but only one is yet to record. Whether you follow North American politics closely or just catch the headlines, our conversation explores issues that affect your daily life. We dig into why prices keep rising, how tariffs impact your wallet, the real effects of immigration on policy, what's happening with healthcare, and even how AI is reshaping society. These aren't just political talking points, they're the forces shaping our future. I want to point out that these questions were not provided in advance, and no editorial control was given to the candidates' team. I also want to point out that our editing for the episode is incredibly minimal and nothing of substance. We're back to our regular programming Tuesday with an incredible episode on AI with OpenAI chairman and Sierra founder Brett Taylor.
AI, I love AI, yes.
To listen and learn.
I wish that every single thing in society could just talk about AI because it's so important and it's just the most important thing in all of our lives.
Pierre, welcome to the show.
Yo, welcome, bro. What up?
For having me.
What up, bruv?
Many Canadians know you from the headlines that often compare you to Trump to focus on conflicts. But your friends and family describe you as caring husband and father and someone deeply committed to serving Canada. What do you want voters to know about you that doesn't make the headlines?
A boot?
Being opposition leader, by definition, requires that you fight a lot. I mean, it's two sword lengths apart in the House of Commons, and the system is deliberately adversarial so that you can hold government to account. But I think it's important for people to know what I'm fighting for. And what I really want is to give everyone the same chance I had. I started from very humble beginnings.
This guy's freaking epic, dude.
I was adopted by a couple of school teachers in Calgary, and yet I've been able to make it here. And the story is the same.
I don't know why I'm shitting on him. I don't know if I even hate this guy or anything. I
became here as a refugee from Venezuela, and she's been able to have a great life, as has her family.
I don't think I care about this guy that much, though. Listen, Trump nuked these dudes. They're never They're not going to make it, bruh. That's what I'm trying to say. Today, Trump was asked about tariff exemptions, including with Apple and electronics. Trump's response included, I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. Based?
Douglas Murray, welcome to the show.
Very good to be back with you in your native Austin.
Yes, you have. You're here for 24 hours. Salubrious.
Wonderful. Watching your success with great admiration.
Thank you.
And great pride as well, in a way. I don't know why I feel pride, but I just...
Well, you definitely contributed to it. I think I managed to get you to take a dice roll many, many years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
That's right. I think I was doing The Madness of Crowds, and you were in your place in Newcastle with the mold on this.
Oh, this is... Oh, this is 2 hours ago. Oh, boy.
Dealing.
Wasn't mold. It was because I had, as I explained for a long time, it's because I had a Yankee Candle addiction, which also actually is something to be embarrassed about, not quite as bad as mold.
Hey, just as a heads up, Americans, okay? Because sometimes you guys get tricked and think these people are your friends, all right? Yankee is their N-word for us, all right? They pretend it's cute. It's not cute. It's them subtly signaling to you that they view you as less than human, all right?
And I had to get it repainted. After our episode, the internet shamed me so much that I had to get the ceiling of my old bedroom repainted.
And now you're here in Austin. And
Look at me now.
It's great to see you.
Well, you too. Trump's been in office for 78 days. What do you make of his efforts so far?
Mixed, I think, as with anyone.
Oh, no! It's going to be the worst answer ever.
He got the very, very large and considerable mandate.
That's not
won the
true.
popular vote,
but okay.
Made it pretty impossible for people to criticize him from the election onwards.
Okay.
First couple of months, there's been very little, I think, pushback or rallying around against him. Then inevitably there are, I think, pushback or first couple of months, there's been very little, I think, pushback or rallying around against him. Then inevitably there are things that are now happening. You may have noticed if you keep an eye on the markets or anything like that.
Okay, so Douglas Murray just can't see across the Atlantic? Is he like blind to anything that happens in the United States, or?
Which very much people are going for him on. But yes, I mean, it's kind of early days, but a mixed bag, I'd say.
It feels like a lot's happened.
Well, a lot has happened.
78 days.
Yes, I mean, one of the things you can say, whatever your views on Trump, you can say with certainty, and I did ahead of the election, have since, which is that he does what he says he's going to do. So whether it's tariffs or foreign policy,
wow, that's friggin'
domestic
epic.
policy, border, you know, he campaigns about it and then he does it, tries to do it. And I am always quite amused by the people who are surprised that, you know, what's he doing with all this tariff stuff? I mean, like, every rally I covered of his, tariffs was a big thing. So yes, there are some corners of it, principally the Ukraine stuff, which I'm concerned about. But it's early days.
There's a sense of sort of the move fast, break things thing.
Oh yeah.
That I think is kind of sexy in Silicon Valley and tech and building businesses and stuff. Not convinced how perfectly it ports across onto governance.
Nice.
Well, the normal problem that people find when they get elected, and in fact I think he had in his first term,
things are
is
hard.
that it takes 4 years or so to work out which levers you can pull and something happens, and which levers pull and you get a big clown appears, and which levers you pull and just absolutely nothing happens. And I think he's come in this time knowing which levers to pull, and a lot of presidential orders and much more. And so it's certainly more efficient and effective so far than his first months in office in the first term. I think things like the border are huge accomplishments. Very, very big reason for his election was we've got to sort out the border. We can't just have a porous border with Central and Southern America and indeed the rest of the world. And border crossings have gone down to almost nothing.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I think that the removal of illegals who have no right to be in America and have been committing crimes whilst in America, or very dangerous criminals, is a very good place to start. And inevitably, when you do that, some people will holler and wail, like the mayor of Boston, who insists that somebody who's been paying taxes all their life in Boston and whose predecessors also paid taxes in Boston have the same rights as somebody who recently broke into Boston and wants to squat there on the street shooting up. And quite a lot of people disagree with that. There are lots of people, of course, who are finding a way on the deportations thing, criticize him, some of which is perfectly legitimate, which is, of course, stuff like...
Oh, man. Okay, Murray has some knowledge about foreign policy, and maybe stuff he's directly reported on. Otherwise, he's a bog standard retard. Fuck.
There have been some cases of people who've been deported who have done nothing wrong. And that's also something that always happens when you try to institute a policy.
No, it's not. That's absolutely not something that just always happens. Oops.
Like that. I don't think it means you don't institute the policy. It means you do it better.
Yep.
More
there was an issue in El Salvador when the president came in and just decided to go scorched earth with everybody into these football stadium-sized prisons, these new things. Yeah. And I remember I did some research on that, and one of the concerns was the collateral damage of the younger brothers of people who were criminals, and you just sort of sweep everybody up. You have a smoke detector principle of either you pattern match incorrectly when it's not there, or you don't pattern match when it is there. And I think in these sorts of situations, people tend to over-index on being a little bit more sensitive to the pattern matching.
Yeah, they should remedy that and make sure they got things accurate. But I think none of that means that the status quo that existed is remotely right. And this is all the sort of blowback that I'd imagine that he and the people who are working with him on that would have expected. It's a little early to say what's going to happen with the market stuff and the tariffs.
Do you know anything about tariffs? Do you know how they work?
I mean, I'm not one of those people who pretends to be an expert on absolutely everything, so I'm not going to pretend to be a tariff expert. I noticed the people who are tariff experts this week are the same people who were experts in Ukrainian mineral deposits just a matter of weeks ago. It's amazing what people can know. It's quite startling.
Pace of learning on the internet. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I think there's a masterclass course about that. But no, all I know is that I got a message from my accountant saying, might be a good time to put more money into the S&P, might not, we'll see. That was a message that I received this morning. Thanks for that.
But this is what Trump has said, not just for the last 4 years campaigning, it's what he said for 40 years. He believes that America is being taken advantage of. And we'll see whether, I would have thought, my expectation, I guess, from the little I know, is it'll be quite a lot of short-term turmoil. If in the long term it doesn't sort it out, if manufacturing cannot return to America as fast as it should, then that's a problem. That's the case in every Western country, though. We've all been satisfying ourselves with cheap goods imported from China, usually using slave labor that we wouldn't want to see at home, but we turned a blind eye. And there's much manufacturing, many goods that there's no reason why you couldn't make them in America. Whether or not you can persuade people to actually take up those jobs, start those firms, that's another matter entirely. But if anywhere can do that, America can.
It's strange that a lot of people who would maybe complain about a cost of living crisis and quality of jobs and employment and opportunities for progression and student loan debt and housing and so on and so forth, also, I would guess are the same profile of people that shop on Temu and Shein.
Yeah. The ones we can buy a top for $4 and throw it away after 2 uses, which,
You know, there's an industry.
Can I hold on? I'm so sorry, but we have to revisit this. The triangle of reality. Okay. The triangle of reality. All right. You can have things done quickly. You can have things done well, and you can have things done cheaply. And you have to pick two parts of the triangle. Okay. When people talk about cheap China shit or whatever, you don't have to buy that. You're getting something that you're getting something fast and cheap, but you're not. But now it's going to be of not the highest quality. If you want to buy higher quality shit, you can buy higher quality shit from China. Okay, you can buy high quality stuff made in the USA, made in China. People like the cheaper stuff because people buy it and they just don't use it that much or whatever. That's what people have chosen. The idea that everything from China is cheap and bad and everything made in America is great and awesome is retarded.
Called the rag industry, and these are a lot of them are engineering. That's right. Get yourself charged up. Come on. they're working in manufacturing, working in engineering, and they use rags, used T-shirts or whatever, that then be washed, but they get trickled down. Maybe it goes to charity shops, something like that, and to clean off grease, to do all of this other stuff. The rag industry in the West is dying because the quality of the clothes that people are wearing are disintegrating so quickly that they can't even be used to mop up oil and water.
Wow. I'm going to sound incredibly old now, but when I was growing up in West London as a boy, I remember there was a rag and bone man.
I did, yeah.
Do you remember that?
There was one that used to go past in Stockton upon Tees, yeah.
A guy sort of
Wheeling a thing.
a traveller usually, I suspect, with a horse-drawn cart, calling out rag and bones.
Yep. Rag bones!
Feels. And if you tell
Fucking
the young
oysters,
now, they won't
clams, and
believe you.
cockles.
Fucking prehistoric. Don Lemon said,
There's a name I haven't heard for a while.
people love AOC, Jasmine Crockett, and Eric Swalwell. I think the Democratic Party should put people out there who the people want, who they're asking for. Is that a good strategy for the future of the left?
I'm not sure about that. Eric Swalwell was the one who was found banging Fang Fang, wasn't he? Do you remember that? Chinese spy Fang Fang. She infiltrated him.
Stop saying it like that.
No, Fang Fang. What's wrong with that?
Stop saying it
He
like
bang bang Fang Fang. Everyone knows that.
that. Okay.
Yeah, he was infiltrated by a Chinese Communist Party spy.
Okay. Sexually.
Very much so.
Okay.
And regrettably so. And that was a big national security breach. But yes, the others. Look, Don Lemon. Why? I mean, like asking to find sense in the entrails of a chicken. What's his analysis is of no value. And if the Democrats listened to him, they'd never be in power again. What?
Let's say that you were a advisor to the left, and in many ways, I imagine that you do have desires to have a burgeoning, flourishing left that doesn't make everybody sort of shuddering,
Sure.
cringe in that way.
Yeah.
What would you advise them to do?
In America?
Yes.
Very straightforward one, which is you listen to your defeat and you learn from it, and you work out what you did wrong. And I think they are, to some extent, my friends who are on the left in America, Democrats, the sensible ones are trying to do that. You'll notice that since the election in November last year, they've definitely changed their strategy a bit. When we haven't got Russia, and you're all Nazis so much. They're still doing it a bit, but not anywhere near as much.
Who's doing the Russia thing? Bro, first of all, we should be doing it. Because fuck, that whole shit is insane. But people got traumatized out of that back in like 2019 or whatever. The media has been so afraid, so reluctant to criticize Trump on anything. And this guy's pretending like, oh, the media is still too. Come on, bro. Are you serious? And then saying like, oh, calling everybody Nazis isn't a good idea. It's like, okay, they call us commies. Sometimes they call us Nazis. I mean, it's just...
Partly because if your opponent has won the popular vote, it's tricky to pretend that the majority of people in America are Nazi supporters.
Really? Because the Republicans just pretend that the popular vote wasn't even right. The Republicans just pretend that all the elections are rigged. So, you know.
The wiser Democrats realize that's not a good strategy.
Losing strategy.
Yeah. Don't insult the voters in their majority. They should learn from it. They should, and I think they are. I think this time around there's much less denial, and now the books are starting to come out as we knew they would be.
This time around, there's much less denial. Like, does he forget that the Democrats won the last election with the largest popular vote in the history of the United States? Like, does he know that? Maybe he just doesn't know that. I don't know. Maybe.
Explaining that, actually, the Democrats kind of knew that Joe Biden wasn't there.
These expose, memoiry, ex-house staffer people.
The people who spent the years of the Biden presidency assuring us that there's nobody who was a sharp attack in the box. And now they're all saying, oh, actually, he didn't know whether he was the president of the United States or the head of NATO and things like that. And so that stuff is starting to come out.
Okay.
And there'll be lots more, and they'll tear themselves apart for a bit. But the main problem for the Democrats is just they don't really have anyone leading the party. Chuck Schumer, when he made his deal with Trump on the budget the other week, immediately was the most hated person on the left, and even Pelosi criticized him on that. So it's hard to see who's really sort of leading the party.
It's not cohesive at the moment.
No, and so they should learn. I mean, my view is, if I was a Democrat advisor, strategist, I would say what anyone would from observing them, which is they tacked very far to the crazy left. And
oh my God, this is like the worst political analysis I've ever heard in my life. Kill me. Oh no.
The American public didn't want it, as indeed most publics don't. And they didn't want all their children to be trans, and they didn't want all of the crazy identity politics stuff that had gone just completely deranged. They also didn't want. I mean, the more sensible ones have already realized that it's a party, a very, very distinguished party with a considerable history. It's not a street movement. It's not a protest movement. I can't remember which one it was. Who the other week I read about him in my column in the New York Post, who led a protest on a street in New York against Elon Musk, and I think it's probably the most illiterate speech I've ever heard against some really quite stiff competition. And it ended up with him saying, "You take your Moscow money, you moo, 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 moo." Yeah.
Okay.
Not good.
Line for the ages.
Line for the ages. Cicero would have envied it. So the wiser ones realize just that's not how you become serious again. You don't give in to the street protest people. Don't give in to the most radical people.
No, you give in to the singular guy who tried to overthrow the last election, denies the results from them, holds your entire party hostage, and doesn't give a fuck about the future of your political party in any way, size, shape, or form. Good one.
Really impressive people in the Democratic Party, but they're going to need to allow them to come up.
Tim Walz.
No, he was.
If I was a Republican strategist, I would tell the Democrats.
Yes, can't be anybody near Kamala, because everything around Kamala was absolutely horrible. Nothing near Kamala. Probably no black people, no blacks, no women's.
That's to keep going with Tim Walz.
The pinnacle of masculinity.
I mean, that's all that stuff is just a disaster. Everyone knows that he was a horrible candidate. Everyone knows that Kamala was a horrible candidate.
Yeah, true.
You just got to find the talent and encourage it up.
Oh,
but
yeah.
they've got time. I don't think they should panic or start, But they do at some point have to have a coherent opposition to Trump and Trumpism.
Well, it certainly seems like one of the things that everybody's probably noticed, how much is the blowing with the wind that we're seeing at the moment of Mark Zuckerberg, not only a sartorial rebrand, but meta policy-based rebrand, getting rid of fact checkers and opening up conversations specifically around, I think, trans or gender identity was one of the points. And
I think what, as I understand it, what happened with Zuckerberg was that he discovered that, with whatever it is, 80,000 employees, you set up a philanthropic wing with like 1,000 employees, and then they spend all their time warring on the 80,000 people making money and derange the whole company. Mm-hmm. And so you get rid of it.
But you've seen that, right? Lots of different companies seeming to move in that direction. So BlackRock, they exited climate groups, eliminated diversity targets, ends its ESG stuff. Hegseth says he's eliminating DEI within the military. And then even European companies like Aldi and Santander are rolling back their DEI programs over here. So it does feel a lot like, I don't know, everyone's blowing with the Trumpian wind, whatever the sort of direction is that things are going in at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, I said to you many years ago, I'm sure, with Mad as a Crowd, I said, I mean, one of the problems with all of that stuff was, at some point it gets serious and the bridges start to fall down,
As multiple airplanes crash in the United States right now, as the entire world order of trade is being reshuffled. I need to go back. I got to get back into I just got to understand this mindset, man. These guys must go out and they're just thinking about like girl cock constantly or something. I can't imagine what it's like to live and to be so afraid of chicks with dicks that it like dominates your entire view of the world. Everywhere you go, you just see that femcock lurking, and it's influencing your feelings on policy from top to bottom. I don't know, man.
I was never totally confident that if the bridges fell down because of DEI, that people wouldn't say that's just yet more evidence of the patriarchy. But it gets serious. It gets really serious at certain points. It gets really serious with the military. I'm very glad that Pete Hegseth is addressing that. You do want extremely tough, mainly men, at the forefront of your nation's military and your nation's defense.
Like even this, what 2% of military things are active combat roles? What does that have to do with like our current military right now? Like does every single person at a desk have to be a manly man? Like, do we need to start TRTing? Do we need to get our software engineers in the Navy on a stack? Like, do we need to have fucking massively shredded software dudes and people who are, running the phones? Like, what? It's so stupid. This is like 4-year-old analysis. Not like analysis that's 4 years old, but analysis coming from a 4-year-old.
It's not about, to use the most perhaps hackneyed but most extraordinary one, it's not about that like CIA recruiting ad where the obese, diverse woman of color who explains how many mental disorders she has is necessarily your ideal poster child.
I didn't get to see
you never get to see her? She was great. She was like a bipolar drone operator or something.
Okay, right. Well, the performance-enhancing effects of different mental maladies, I guess, can work quite well on in the military, but most of them would be, like psychopathy.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes.
But
You certainly don't want somebody on a lot of hormones in charge of a drone program.
yeah, I didn't know.
Like, you guys know that right now, like, Hamas is ran by men, right? That org that he virtue signals so much over, okay, in between getting APAC checks and extra foreskins shipped to him from whatever rabbi is giving him talking points for Israel, right? You know that, like, Hamas, that's all men, right? All these people who said were Russia and Ukraine, these are two nations that are at war with each other. These are men leading these nations, right? Like, what is it? Listen, okay, I hate women, and I love to shit on women, okay? But it can't be for this reason. They're too emotional. Like, Donald Trump is the most effeminately emotional man that has ever been president of the United States in the history of the world. This guy is so emotional. He has daily periods, okay, where the entire global world trade system changes on his whim. And how could you possibly make the criticism of, well, you can't have people who are on their periods flying the drones. Like, oh my God, get over yourself. Holy shit. Or just be a rapist. Do something normal for hating women. Don't go on politics shows and talk about it like this. This is retarded.
No, I think it'll be very interesting to see what the next sort of 2 years has in store, especially for what did the Democrats do in reversing some of the positions that caused them to sort of fall behind so much, how much faith has been lost. You know what it kind of feels like a little bit to me? The period that we had during COVID where kind of the veils fell from people's eyes a little around, the mainstream media don't really know what they're talking about, and they roll back their positions, and the institutions that are supposed to be in charge of this stuff and people that are supposed to know what's going on in terms of virology or epidemiology or public health or whatever. I actually think that that there's no adults in the room. I don't think there's any adults.
The thing is, there are. It's just what always happens is, something goes deranged in one direction, then you get a correction. But as we've discussed before, the question is always whether the correction goes back to level or whether it's an overcorrection that goes to somewhere equally crazy or recognizably crazy. Take that one.
Wait, hold on. What did this upgrade do? Transport belt capacity. Oh, wait. So I have to use a stack inserter. But if I use a stack inserter, it stacks items on the belt? Oh, shit. At Destiny, I work in a high-stress job. The training outcomes for women are objectively worse because they are worse at solving problems under stress. They get emotional. That's fine. It might be the case that of all the men that would try out for that position, 60% would make it, and of all the women that tried for that position, 30% would make it. But then you just have standards. If somebody can pass the standard, let them do the job. Like, that's so easy. That's such an easy thing to do. That's such an easy position to take that's not retarded.
One of the COVID era and the post-COVID era, there's lots and lots of things that clearly went wrong. That doesn't mean, in my view, that you should discourage people from giving polio vaccines to their children. There's lots that has gone wrong in public health, and lots that can be corrected. But it doesn't mean that there should be no guardrails in society. Look at the way in which the term gatekeeper is used these days, as if there should be no gatekeeping. And actually, sometimes, people might disagree with this, but actually sometimes, if there's somebody who's an expert in a field and they should be trusted and can be trusted, they do need to draw the line of what is within the parameters and what is not. That's obviously why RFK Jr. caused a lot of concern when he came in, was, is this a suitable correction or a wild overcorrection?
You described the West as a civilization trying to erase itself.
Mm-hmm.
Do you reckon we've got any better over the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that the anti-Western assault has been halted. As I say, again, we'll see whether or not it corrects or overcorrects. But I don't think that in the era of Trump's second term, that in America that's going to be as much of a problem. Elsewhere, usual story. Our country of birth, usual story.
Temperature plays a huge role in how well you sleep, but traditional bedding often falls short. Just add the brand new Pod 4 Ultra to your mattress like a fitted sheet, and it will automatically cool down or warm up each side of your bed up to 20 degrees. Plus, it's got integrated sensors that track your sleep time and your sleep phases and your HRV and your snoring and your heart rate with 99% accuracy. 8 Sleep has been clinically proven to increase total sleep by up to 1 hour every night, increase deep sleep by up to 2.5 hours a month, and reduce wake time by up to 3 hours per month. Best of all, they ship to the US, Canada, United Kingdom, Europe, and Australia. Plus, they offer a a 30-day sleep trial. So you can buy it and sleep on it for 29 days. And if you do not like it, they will give you your money back. Right now, you can get $350 off the brand new Pod 4 Ultra by going to the link in the description below or heading to 8sleep.com/modernwisdom using the code modernwisdom at checkout. That's EIGHT sleep.com/modernwisdom and modern wisdom.
Will do.
At checkout. Say more. How are you feeling about the UK at the moment?
Well, I don't know when you will ask back, but my experience of going back to the UK now is that everyone is supremely depressed and doesn't think life will get better.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Gary's economics monologue just being played on repeat, but like that sentiment of you're broke and your children are going to be broke and no one's going to get a house and you're going to die destitute.
Yeah, everyone's going to be poorer than this generation and all that sort of thing. Yeah, I was very depressed when I went back to the UK last because I think I'd just come fresh from the inauguration in DC, and I mean, which was bracing for lots of reasons. But I just noticed that there are lots of opportunities for things to be righted in America and put in a more sane direction. Again, we'll see if that happens. But I think there's a great opportunity, this whole set of great opportunities in America, economic and much more for the country, educational reform, a lot of problems that America needs to address that have now the opportunity to be addressed. Whereas Britain, like most of Western Europe, it just stumbles on. It's very depressing, and I noticed
not very inspiring.
I've noticed that my friends are all wildly depressed. I'm rather surprised at how upbeat I was. I mean, they beat it out of me.
Having just come from a war zone, a selection of war zones.
But within 24 hours of being in the UK, I was suitably depressed at the equilibrium that was expected of everyone.
Cortisol level and come into line with everyone else. Yeah. Instead, I've seen a lot of plenty wars up close, but it's the UK that I'm most concerned about.
Well, yeah, actually, I am. It may be a sort of dramatic overstatement, but yeah, I mean, what gives you hope in any country, whether it's a peace or a war, is whether the people in the country want to fight for the country, metaphorically or literally. And in the last few years, I think since I last saw you, I've spent a lot of time in Ukraine and more so in Israel and the Middle East, and seen people literally fighting for their survival, for their country, and that's always, but particularly in those cases, a very remarkable thing to see. When you then see a de-energized, enervated society where everyone's split and no one knows how to go forward, it's very concerning. And I just see that for the time being rolling on in the UK. As I say, the stop has been put to it of a kind in the US. But
how much is bottom up and how much is top down?
The US definitely not divided. The US is definitely headed forward in a unified, positive direction. Very astute observation.
Much of this is sort of structural, bureaucratic, because of the leadership, because of things that need to be changed at an institutional level. And how much of this is, as you mentioned, the sort of culture of the people, that they're sort of reveling in their own I guess binding together over their own sort of shared discontent.
Well, having few economic opportunities causes everything else to go wrong. I mean, I'm completely persuaded by my economist friends who say, the one job of politics is to keep the economy good, and if you don't do that, everything else can go wrong as well. I think that's true, but it's a combination of the economics, the market not working, growth not happening, wages being stagnant, unaffordability of housing, and then plus the just wild innovation of all the cultural crap. I think you can have weak economics but keep strong culture. But if you've got weak economics and weak culture, I mean, I was just watching this morning. There's a row that's been going on because it's actually something I helped to fuel. There's a bunch of Labour MPs who've been busily campaigning against a third runway at Heathrow Airport, which is just like.
Is Murray pro-Brexit? Because, I noticed that we didn't talk about that at all. Or do we not factor that into any of our calculations?
Seriously, this has happened all my adult life. Any healthy country doesn't debate for 20 years a third runway at your major airport. You just get it done. Just build it. Same thing with there's infrastructure like HS2, which has one virtue in it, which is that the plan is to be able to get out of Birmingham faster. And these big infrastructure projects have been like endlessly debated in the UK for like 20 years. And that's very depressing. But yes, a group of Labour MPs, all with diverse constituencies.
Why would the UK plan anything about getting out of Birmingham? What do they have to do with US cities? What?
Have been busily anti-runway at Heathrow, but have been urging the funding of an airport in Mirpur because their constituents want to be able to get back and forth to see family.
Where's Mirpur?
In Pakistan. They're very insistent that anti-building of runways in England, but very in Pakistan. And those things are just crazy, and everyone in Britain can see it. And you know, and then people criticised these MPs for this obvious, ridiculous double standard of saying, you know, if Heathrow expands, you know, it will kill the planet. And they go, but Nipur, great,
Good to go.
and everyone can see that. And then people in Britain, a couple of MPs called it out, and then were immediately called Islamophobic racists by these.
George Trump sit down with Bukkake? Not yet, but if you link it, I'll watch it after this one.
The people wanted to change their weapons, and they wanted to. He demanded, they love you, they love what you do. You know, I'm not your supporter.
What, bro? Nobody likes you. Nobody wants you here, ever.
Crispy told me to hop in here, okay? So I'm going to hop in here real quick and give you a pitch.
Okay. Also, wait.
And the community.
Your mic was lagging a little bit, so... But I think it's good now. Okay, go. What do you... Oh, holding.
Still bad or good?
I don't know. We'll find out. Go for it.
Okay. I think that you should, when you're watching these videos, have the community clip things that you disagree with these people, like Murray saying the shit about the military needing to be men and you calling them directly out. I think you should be having people clip that and calling these people out directly on Twitter to try to get conversations with these people, like in real time.
Okay.
So like as you're watching these things, just
No, I understand what
call
you're
them
saying.
out,
Have like a
immediately.
60-second summary of the things I disagree with, and then... Yeah, that's probably...
Well, no, like have them have their clip of like what you disagree with them on, so they can't run and say like, oh, well, I didn't actually say that. It's like, no, here's the clip. Here's my disagreement with you. Why don't we talk about it?
Oh, sure. I think what most people tend to do is they just don't respond at all on Twitter because they don't, Like PBD, I think I've called those guys out a few times, but yeah, I mean, I can try, sure, yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's where you weaponize the community.
True. Okay.
In a good way. Okay, that's it.
All right, I'll keep it in mind. I love you.
All right, bye.
What is that quote? Firstly, because although I voted for Brexit, I am not especially a Brexiteer. At any rate, it isn't what I put as my job description. What is this weird world? Is that a quote from that Substack article of his? What is this weird world? You notice where people do this thing where they're almost like embarrassed to identify with like Trump or conservatives? They're like, well, I'm not a conservative. I wouldn't call myself MAGA per se. How many times did you vote for Trump? I voted for Trump 6 times. Okay, I put him as a write-in on all the midterms, just in case. And I voted twice for him in 2020 because I knew you guys were going to rig it. But I wouldn't call myself like a hardcore MAGA. What? Okay, Chief.
Other MPs who, that's just typical Britain. It's like typical Britain, and nobody knows how to get out of it because it's the same thing. Everyone now knows. You complain about anything in Britain, online or off, and these weird eunuch-ized police will tap on your door and none of it's metaphorical. As Konstantin Kisin said the other week, about the thousands and thousands of people who've had police come to their door because of like saying something critical of their school on Facebook and this sort of thing. It's just bizarre, the weak situation that Britain has got into. We weren't like that. We don't have to be.
Yeah, the culture of a stiff upper lip appears to have been sort of lost in its entirety.
It hasn't been. It's just been wildly suppressed, like everything else, like masculinity, like natural, the natural culture of the country. I wrote the other week about this ridiculous thing where the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust inevitably is waging war on Shakespeare, and their new thing is like, why are we doing so much Shakespeare at the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, and why aren't we spending more time celebrating this Bengali poet? Well, said Bengali poet wasn't born in Stratford-upon-Avon, you jerk. Probably if you go to his birthplace, you won't find all that much Shakespeare. But it's just filled, all of the institutions, all the cultural institutions, all filled with stupid thinking like that,
I think the slight difference is there's a sense of rebelliousness in America that we don't.
Well, there is in Britain as well. There is everywhere. It's just that you can very effectively squash it. And, for some years in America, they tried to squash that in America. And Americans used the biggest hammer they could find to hit back against it, which is Donald J. Trump. And
like they always say this, like it's so, I hate political commentary today. I wish it should all be wiped out and then we just start over, okay? People say the thing this is that fallacy that I described before, where somebody will describe irrationality but then they'll contribute to it. It's so funny, actually, because Murray just did the same. He called out Dave Smith for doing this, where Dave Smith is like, well, this has created fertile ground for idiocy. And Murray is like, well, are you watering it? It seems like you're helping, right? And he's like, well, yeah, Americans fought back with a huge sledgehammer, the biggest one they could find. The implication there being that Donald Trump maybe wasn't the best choice, or that Donald Trump is maybe too aggressive, or is coming at this without the leadership and tact and diplomatic skill we'd expect. But then when you ask them about Trump, oh, he's great. Oh, he's, it's a little quick, but oh yeah, I just like, it's a 100% support basically through and through. Like, okay, well, where are all of your criticisms? If this guy is, such a wild hammer that's just striking back, where are the criticisms for any of this stuff?
The British public haven't yet found a hammer.
Very interesting. Yeah, well, if you think about who...
I watched a clip of Douglas talking to Ben Shapiro, and he made an interesting argument. The death of 15 million Jews would be more of a tragedy than 15 million Christians. What do you think about that? Well, the death of 15 million Jews right now would be it. Every single Jew on the planet would be dead. I mean,
the British public haven't yet found a hammer.
Very interesting. Yeah, well, if you think about...
The British public haven't yet found a hammer? Excuse me? Your country literally left the fucking European Union. Hello? Did we forget about this?
And the British public haven't yet found a hammer.
Very interesting. Yeah, well, if you think about who Americans are the progeny of, I'm aware that recent immigration, waters this down a little bit, but they're the descendants of people who said, 8-week journey at sea, limited chance of survival, not really too sure what I'm going to, count me in.
Yeah, I know that there is an explanation of that, yes. But there's also, I'd like to think there are plenty of belligerent buggers back home as well. And there's plenty of brave people and plenty of people who may not have left the islands, but who still have similar instincts,
It just seems like there's at least in the UK, and not among most of the friends that I spend my time with, but that's because I, very carefully sort of selected my group of friends to not be those people. But when I hear the sort of commentary that happens online, I do think, this shared reveling in discontent, in, if you were to ring one of your friends and say, in the UK, get that in. Thank you, Douglas. Time for you to do your first ad read. There we are.
Yeah, like, that's actually true. This is fuck, I hate this guy. This is the worst kind of person. Where does Murray live right now, actually? Does he live in the UK, or does he live abroad? Does anybody know? I'm sorry, that sounded like a dox. I didn't mean it. We don't do that to just... New York? No shot does he live in New York. Does he actually? I saw 3 people type that in chat. He lives in New York. So this guy votes for Brexit, watches the entire United Kingdom burn as a result, leaves the fucking country, and then bitches about the current state of the UK from New York City? Like, what the fuck? Really?
Tonic.
If I become wildly ill from drinking this, it's bad for you, isn't it?
It would look bad, but you can hold it together. I'm sure you've taken worse across your illustrious career. Thank you. Very good. Okay, come on. Here we go. Cheers. Chin chin.
Cheers.
Chin chin.
Cheerio.
Delicious. Very up. That's good. Yeah, you were paid to say that. I always remember I rang a friend and I said, hey, what are you doing today? Tell me about what you've done today. Oh man, living the dream. Took the bins out this morning. It's been raining all day. That classic British sort of...
That's sort of banter, though.
It is, but it feels to me like it... Be careful sort of what you pretend to be, because you are what you pretend to be in some ways. And rarely... That's Kurt Vonnegut. Rarely you... It's hard to reverse that. Like, people bond in the UK over this sense of shared suffering, over this sense that things are sort of a little bit crap and not necessarily...
Well, you have to make them better, then.
Yep, I think so.
Sort of. I don't really like whining. Although we're doing it a bit at the moment.
Yeah, well, we can bond together over that. Conor McGregor, Saviour of Ireland.
Interesting figure.
Big fan of stimulants.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I've been reliably told.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What sort of stimulants are we talking about?
The prototypical nasal delivery system. The patented...
Oh.
Conor McGregor likes his cocaine.
I see.
Okay, never mind.
Right. Oh, gosh. Right.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wasn't immediate what I was thinking when you mentioned him. But no, I quite like the fact that he stood up and said what a shithole the politicians are making of his home country of Ireland at the moment.
I thought some people abuse the... There's like a nasally spray thing that some people get addicted to. It fucks their nose shit up, and they have to like take it all the time because they get clogged noses otherwise. I don't know what they're called, but cocaine is an acceptable drug though.
And then his statement was confirmed by the fact that all Irish politicians condemned him for saying it. That's always
Suggests
sign
you're close
that
to the
you're right.
bullseye.
Yeah, always sign that you're right. Yeah, I admired him for saying that. I don't know, everything about him is admirable, but I admired him for saying that. Again, I'm like, well, since when did the Irish become such weak people? I mean, when I was growing up, they were car bombers and... No, I mean, I don't joke about that, but... No, there was some years ago in Derry, London Derry, it was made European City of Culture. I mean,
cocaine is a bit overrated in my opinion. I really shouldn't talk because I haven't tried it yet, but it seems like a fun thing to do every now and then. The big problem with most recreational drugs is people just do them way too much.
to the Northern Ireland, but the moment that it was announced that London Derry was to become European City of Culture, somebody put a car bomb outside the offices of the European City of Culture. It fortunately didn't go off, but as a local friend of mine said, in one way we were introducing them to our local culture. Anyway, no, I mean, I have lots of views about the Irish, but I never thought of them as people you could just walk over. And the current generation of politicians with their immigration policies much more seem to have suggested you can just walk over the Irish. It's rather surprising.
Have you tried to tie any of these threads together, sort of what we're seeing?
Well, I tried in a book some years ago called Strange Death of Europe and said almost everything I had to say about that. And
how much of a Cassandra do you feel like now?
I think I was pretty much right on everything. Yeah. I didn't know how fast the timeline I'd be right on or which countries, but it didn't require a prophet. It just required somebody with eyes. You know, if you madly import people from all over.
God damn, bro. You know, if you're old enough, if you're a millennial, imagine how we felt about Muslims, like on 9/12, okay, after 9/11, and like in the following months. That's just how Western Europeans permanently feel about Muslims. Based. Aren't you scared of addiction with cocaine? Not for cocaine, not in particular, but
The world you don't particularly want to be part of your society and shove them into, County Kerry. You'll create problems.
I've been fascinated by the pace of the news and how quickly there's a lack of stickiness that they've all had. Is it disturbing that we regularly just forget or sort of look away from catastrophes, or is it just sort of par for course in the modern world now? Because, like, remember when Trump got shot? No, me neither.
Yeah, I know, but that disappeared within days. It was amazing.
And it just seems like...
You haven't even got much of an explanation about the shooter.
And I don't see anybody really... Because there's always something new. The velocity of news. I remember in AS-level media studies in Stockton Sixth Form College, I was told this story about a lady on September 12th, 2001, who's a PR agent, and she advised all of the companies that they were working with to dump every piece of bad news that they had.
Oh, there was somebody in the British government who was an advisor.
Good day for bad news.
Good day for bad news, that's right. And then she lost her job.
Yep.
Yeah.
no.
I don't think it... I think that the devices we all have in our pockets speed everything up. But what I can't quite understand is that, I mean, I have to be across all or most of the news, certainly about the things I need to know about, because it's my job as well as my passion. But
True.
I can't understand the people who like have the buzz on their Apple iPhone for like updates of news when they're not in the business of it. It seems it's very, very unhealthy to my view. I think it creates a sort of cycle of panic and it's forgetfulness and self-aggrandizement and oh my God, have you heard? Earthquake in Myanmar, and that's bad, but it all flows by, and it's always like that. I'm not quite sure what people are meant to do with most of the information that's coming their way if they're not in the business.
Jerk off to
Not
it.
quite sure what's expected of them, other than to kind of some people they think
Following it.
Yeah, or sort of prove
Did you see that Trump was 224 pounds, 6'4"? The only thing wrong with this perfect specimen of a human being was that there was a slight graze on his ear from a gunshot wound.
hair or something. I don't know. I wish more people would read books.
What was his blood pressure? What was like 122 over 60 or something? This guy is the healthiest 82-year-old in the universe. Doesn't exercise, doesn't eat right. Clearly appears to be overweight. He must just be in a fat suit all the time. Oh my God, dude. It was the fake. What was that? Wait, somebody linked that shit again.
It just,
62 resting heart rate. Yeah.
You've spent the last few years not in
Basically
the
an
US
athlete.
that much. You've been traveling. Not maybe the way that most people would consider traveling.
Well, I didn't take a gap year in Thailand.
Shame. But with that, we've had an awful lot of turmoil over the last few years, and it doesn't, very few things seem to stick now. Even causes that people were once unbelievably ardent about. It is the sort of manana, something new, something more sexy, something more recent. And
That's true.
yeah, the ability for anything to be Lindy is increasingly difficult.
To be what?
Lindy. The life cycle of a non-perishable good, like an idea. It's Taleb sort of repopularized it. Basically, the classics are the classics for a reason. If something's been around for 500 years, it's probably likely that it's going to be around in future. The problem being that we are living in a never-ending now, where almost all
78 years old, 10 months. Height, 75 inches. Which is like 6'2", I guess. Weight, 224 pounds. Resting heart rate, only 62 beats per minute. Blood pressure, 128 over 74. 98.6 temp. My goodness. Examination of the head, ears, nose, and throat revealed no significant abnormalities, with the exception of scarring on the right ear from a gunshot wound.
all of the content that you consume today was created in the last 24 hours. In fact, that's exactly how Instagram stories and Snapchat and stuff like that work.
Yes.
If you see
He plays golf. Calling golf a sport is like calling Smash Brothers a fighting game. Okay, stop. No one believes you.
in the last 24 hours. In fact, that's exactly how Instagram stories and Snapchat and stuff like that work.
Yes.
If you see something today that's on the trending side of X and it's still there tomorrow, you think, fucking hell, that's a big story. It's still here tomorrow.
Yes.
That's a big story.
I often say this about some of the war zones I've spent recent years in, is that it's
His medical history is notable for well-controlled hypercholesterolemia, seasonal allergies, a history of COVID-19 infection, well-managed rosacea. Is that what he says, why he has the orange stuff on his face? That would actually maybe make a little bit of sense. Actinic keratosis. Was that supposed to be actinic? Is that a typo? I have no idea. Benign nevi. Are we just making shit up now? Diverticulosis and a benign colon polyp. He had his appendix removed at age 11, not like us. Bilateral cataract surgery. Ew, in both eyes? Oof. Social history. Lifelong abstinence from tobacco and alcohol. President Trump remains in excellent health, exhibiting robust cardiac, pulmonary, neurological, and general physical function. His active lifestyle continues to contribute significantly to his well-being. President Trump's days include participation in multiple meetings, public appearances, press availability, and frequent victories in golf events. President Trump exhibits excellent cognitive and physical health and is fully fit to execute the duties of the commander-in-chief and head of state. I love the North Korea tier shit we have now with our president. Feels good, man.
I sometimes come back and
Stop!
You know, happened in America.
Wait, what planet did I
get
fly
this sense
to?
like people are fed up of the war.
Oh no, I went to the right place.
I go, but it's not your place to be fed up of the war. You're not in the war. You're nowhere near the war. What you're saying is you want the story to change, but the story's not there for you. It's not there for your edification or entertainment. That's a very unhealthy attitude I come across quite a lot. Oh, can't it just be over? Oh, bet no one in the region wishes that.
Here's an interesting study about German political polarization. This shows that urban and young urban voters are far to the left of average and young rural voters are far to the right. The people that live and work with immigrants are not voting for the anti-immigrant parties, so I think your perception of Europeans is a bit internet biased. I don't think that's true at all. Just because Europe tends to have a lot more issues with both with Muslims and with their feelings about Muslims doesn't negate the fact that rural and city divides in voters is a true thing. I mean, that's true. That's probably one of the only constants I've seen that is reliably true across the entire world. That people that live in cities tend to be a bit to the left, and people that live in rural areas tend to be more to the right. That's like one of the only true things that seems to hold up almost regardless of where you are. God damn it. No, we're fine. You can take a few hits.
Yeah, that's a peril of coming back from places where the news is real, where none of it's metaphorical and none of it's
Wow. That's hardcore, dude. That's
abstract.
hardcore. That's hardcore. That's
The
hardcore.
criticisms from people who are getting pinged on their iPhone a few too many times per day seem a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I just got back from Ukraine again the other day, and I watched the unfortunate episode in the Oval Office between President Zelensky and the president and vice president. And I watched it with some Ukrainian soldiers in a trench at the front line. And, well, I watched it and then noticed that a bit later that they'd noticed it. And I was profoundly depressed by what I saw. And then actually was rather energized by the fact that the response of the troops was different.
How so?
Well, I said to the commander of the drone unit that I was embedded with, I can't help noticing that as you were scrolling through your Instagram in a down moment, that was one of the things that came across your phone, along with, the usual cat videos and sort of hot chicks sort of thing, And there was a picture from the Oval Office, and I said, do you have any, reaction to that? And he said, well, we were kind of encouraged not to spend too much time focusing on the
Politics.
international toings and froings. And he said, I was rather pleased to quote it in the post, he said, shit happens all the time, but I've got a job to do. He went out and he put the bomb on the drone and sent it off.
Keep calm and carry on droning.
Yeah. That's always rather encouraging in a way, that what people get head up about, nevertheless, there's a level at which people are still... And, not whatever people's thoughts about that war, he and the other people in the trench, their homes are like 30 kilometers behind us, and the Russians were 1.5 kilometers that way, so none of it is abstract,
Do you know Freya India? You familiar with her?
No.
A young blonde girl, writer, very good, on Substack and doing some stuff with the Free Press things.
Oh, yeah, I've seen the byline, yeah.
And I had this conversation with her at the start of last year. She was talking a lot about how people criticize Gen Z for taking stuff that they see online and turning it, that's right, come on, keep fueling yourself, very good. And they see it as reality, and people criticize Gen Z for turning the virtual into the real in this way. And she said, well, you have to realize that a lot of these kids are spending, 8-10 hours a day on screens, far less asleep, far less around other people. So I understand, it makes sense sort of rationally, if you were to just sort of explain the situation, why are you over prioritizing what's happening digitally over what's happening in the real world, or your real world? Again, news stories from outside of your territory, of your domain of control, it's externalizing of agency, all this sort of stuff. But yeah, she said, the online world is the real world for these people. And I kind of get the same sense here. I kind of get the same sense that people who don't know what's happening on the ground, who don't understand sort of the implications of what this is, they get to LARP within the sort of narrative, and then you're in the trenches with these people and they say, well, I've got a job to do. So I kind of can't afford to.
But we shouldn't be of the dejected belief that people are always what they are now. One of the things that's much struck me in the last 18 months in Israel has been that the generation that I partly write about in this new book are very largely people from a generation who their elders thought were, iPhone obsessed, Snapchat and Instagram
Brain
obsessed,
rot, yeah.
Brain rot, just wanted to party and have fun and, be on Instagram. That was what a lot of older Israelis thought, who fought in 67 and 73 and, and so on. And then actually when their country was attacked, that this is a generation that has stood up and shown its mettle.
They've been galvanized.
They really have. I mean, I've been with them, for much of the last 18 months, and whether it's in Gaza or in Lebanon or in Israel or Judea and Samaria. And I'm constantly struck by this, that these are people whose contemporaries in America and Britain are still described in the terms that they were described as until October the 6th, 2023. So it's not inevitable that people can't rise to an occasion or can't change. It's not inevitable that because, there's a sort of virtual era you've been in that you'll always be stuck in it.
Indubitably.
I do think, when I came back from Middle East at Christmas last year, I spoke to a friend who's a politician, and I mentioned this phenomenon of, just because people have been, it does not mean that when a time of trial comes, which is something I've had on my mind a lot in recent years, it's not inevitable that at the moment of trial, some people, or a lot of people, don't step up and really show what they are for the good. And this friend said, yes, it's true, it's circumstances, isn't it? And I said, I've got a slight tweak to make to that observation, which is, yes, it's circumstances.
But
But it's not just circumstances. It's circumstances plus whether you have well-cultured people up until that moment. This is why I've cited a few times, and I cited in this book, the terrible, terrible statistics for the percentage of young Americans who'd be willing to fight for their country if it was under imminent threat of invasion, the number of British young people who'd be willing to fight for their country if it was an existential risk. And this is something, I say this in Democracies and Death Cults, but if you look at the stats, it's terrifying.
While this is true, it's also hard to even imagine, right? We don't have that. Like, it's hard to know what a person will do until the person is like faced with something like that, or faced with something like that in like a realistic way. Like if I were to ask somebody, what would you do if, some guy, how would you feel about, this person if he, called your friend this or did that or whatever? Like, some people might say like, oh, I don't know, I wouldn't care. Oh, who knows? But like people can have a huge change of heart when they actually see it. Like if you right now, I firmly believe that I don't know if most of America would fight to defend America if you were to pull them and ask them that question. But if it actually came down to it, like if Chinese people or Mexicans or Russians or whatever, Canadians were to do like a full-scale ground invasion of the United States, I think a lot more Americans would step up than who would say they would, more than who would say they would in like a poll. That's my feeling on it.
Shortly after Ukraine was invaded by Russia in February 22, there was a poll asking Americans, what percentage of them would be willing to stay and fight if their country was invaded. And only just a majority of Republicans said that they would stay and fight, and only just a majority of Democrats. And as I quipped to them,
the funny thing is, until Pearl Harbor, if there was polling, many people were isolationists. If there was polling, I mean, the United States was kind of isolationist through World War I and II, right? It took attacks, I think, to bring us into both of those conflicts. Actually, the U.S. is maybe just always isolationist, actually, the more I think about it. Because even for Vietnam, right? Didn't we need caution, because I haven't studied Vietnam in depth, but like the Gulf of Tonkin, wasn't that somewhat fabricated? And that's kind of what got the American public kind of okay-ish with us starting to commit to Vietnam.
at the time, that means the rest of them would hot-foot it to Canada, assuming that Canada wasn't the invader. I think when I first made that observation, that seemed like a joke now.
In other news, you've probably heard me talk about Element before, and that's...
I haven't. Talk about it.
Because, frankly, I'm dependent on it. For the last 3 years, I've started my morning every single day with Element. It's a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything that you need, nothing that you don't. It's got a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium with no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, or any other junk. And it plays a critical role in reducing muscle cramps and fatigue while optimizing brain health, regulating appetite, and curbing cravings. This orange flavor in a cold glass of water is like a beautiful, sweet, salty, orangey nectar, and it is the ultimate way to begin your day, and I genuinely feel the difference when I don't take it. Best of all, they've got a no questions asked refund policy, so you can buy it and try it, use the entire box, and if you don't like it, they'll just give you your money back, and you don't even need to return it. That's how confident they are that you'll love it.
Crazy.
Right now, you can get a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box by going to the link in the description below, or heading to drinklmnt.com/modernwisdom. That's drinklmnt.com/modernwisdom. I don't know whether you know that Canada owns Pornhub.
Does it indeed?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure of the... is that just what happens? I say
Israel.
Canada and you go...
Yeah, Pornhub.
Yeah.
No, you haven't... Wait for my 300 IQ move here.
Yeah, I'm watching this with interest.
The secret weapon in the trade war that Canada needs to use is to restrict access to Pornhub. That's how they fight back. You want to talk about tariffs? We'll see what happens when you don't have as free and easy access to millions of... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Honestly, this comedian came up with the idea. I think it's a strong solution.
Strong. We'll see if Mark Carney has the balls to do that. No, I mean, I was fascinated by that. And when that poll first came out, a lot of Americans sort of wrote about it and said, crikey, that's not good news. But I wasn't so depressed about it because, in my interpretation, the concept for most Americans of their country being invaded by land
he's going to do it. Yeah, right. We don't even have any concept of that.
Invasion from another country is not just hard to imagine, it's impossible to imagine. It's not impossible to imagine if you live in Donetsk or indeed in Kiev, but it's not impossible if you live in Latvia or Lithuania or Estonia anymore.
I'm sorry. Fuck. Where's Steve Witkoff was the guy who was in Russia recently, I think, doing our negotiations.
On March 21st.
It's just very funny listening to this. This is our, I don't know what his position even is, foreign envoy. I don't know. I've just made that up.
What they think about.
The largest issue in that conflict are these so-called four regions: Donbass,
Yes.
Crimea, the names
Lugansk, yeah.
Lugansk, and there's two others. They're Russian-speaking.
Yep.
There have been referendums where the overwhelming majority of the people have indicated that they want to be on.
Kill me, dude. Please, just kill me. Just kill me.
But it's impossible for most Americans to imagine. So in a way, it's not really a fair question. It's like me saying, how do you think you'd behave if UFOs landed and Martians started telling you what to do? You just don't know. What? But it was the same in the UK after about a year ago, I think, partly because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But there was also, I think, the chief of the defense staff said, if this escalation continued in Europe, then we might have to have conscription in the UK. And again, I mean, that sounds like nobody from this generation can even imagine that. But that was just what he said. And then, of course, there's a poll, and it asks young people from the ages of 18 to 40, which is the ages of our forebears were when they went to fight in 1914, 18, and 1939, 45. And the majority of people said that they wouldn't fight, even if...
Want to join me in fucking off to Ukraine with our AR-15s? Bro, I picked mine up today. The guy let me walk out with it. He didn't even ask me for my concealed carry permit. So I have it, but I have no... It doesn't come with any magazines, which I didn't realize. And there's not even irons on it yet, so I have to order that shit next.
Britain was at existential risk of invasion. And by the way, when I looked...
Wait, also, real quick, random meme. Show it on stream. You're not supposed to show guns on YouTube streams. You can do it in videos, but not on streams for whatever reason. They don't want us to go mass shooting. Is it worth it to get that Type 3 FFL or whatever, like for an antique collector? Like, is that a bunch of paperwork? Because it'd be cool to just ship guns right to my house instead of...
Even if Britain was at existential risk of invasion. And by the way, when I looked at the figures, I mean, there was some great, I think it was YouGov who did it, there were some fantastic gems inside that. One was that one of the main reasons why people said that they wouldn't fight was like just the most banal things that they've been told by Hollywood films and things, which is, and little bits of Gandhi, which was, the number of people who said things like, war doesn't solve anything. Want to bet? So there was that. And another one I think I was fascinated by, I think 9% of the young people questioned said that they couldn't fight because they had someone at home they were looking after. It was a slightly mysterious answer to me. I'm looking after my nan, so I can't fight to protect her. I'm too busy bringing her tea in the morning to stop
Make
her
sure
getting...
that someone doesn't kick the door down.
Yeah, it's very strange. Anyway, but the point is...
Wait, what? I don't understand that at all. Doesn't that make a ton of sense? I'm pretty sure all the European countries are having the same issue we have in America, where you guys all have like aging and old populations as well. No? So doesn't it make sense? You might be taking care of an old person?
The reason I mention this rather laboriously is I do think that it's very, very hard to predict how people actually react at a time of trial. One of the reasons why I tell some of the personal stories I do about the people I've spoken to in the war in Israel in the last year and a half is because it's so interesting to see who steps up and
how people react.
And,
His idea is you're going to go fight to protect them? True. That feel when I come home and my child is dead on the floor. My 6-month-old was too retarded to feed himself, but at least I went off to war and I fought so that his body won't be exploded. Okay, based.
Heroism of some people, indeed many people, when you realize what's at stake. I quote...
One thing that's true, kind of in League, it's definitely true in EVE Online, and I'm gonna go ahead and guess that this is true in real military operations as well. One thing that is constantly discounted, or it feels like people don't really give it as much credit as maybe they should, are logistics. Logistics are like the unsung heroes of any conflict ever. When you're talking about war, you're talking about moving so much food, ammunition, supplies, medical stuff. There's so much stuff involved in maintaining and tracking and shipping when it comes to supply lines and everything else. And one of the reasons why the United States is supposedly like so fucking effective at doing war is because logistics is something that we are very, 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 very good at. It is incredibly challenging to get logistics done well. And when they fail, people don't talk about it that much. When they succeed, people don't talk about it that much. It seems like nobody really fixates on that as much. It's always more on like the who's pulling the trigger and who's shooting at the tanks and who's with the airplane pilots that are blowing everybody up. And I remember there was I've seen a lot of 4chan memes posted about it, but like we literally have is it the Burger King truck? And there's like there are like ice cream cargo ships that would carry ice cream cones. I think this is for World War II, well, and other frozen goods as well, but that feel when the Burger King truck is dropped on your country. This motherfucker's flown out there. That's a goddamn airplane, okay? Bro, you're fucked. You're fucked.
The opening of On Democracies and Death Cults is...
We literally had a part for the sonar cooling system custom made and delivered in the middle of the fucking ocean in less than a week. Yeah, it's amazing. And you don't see it either because like war is, you see like the soldiers on the map and the positions of the people and they're shooting and all that, but there's just so much that goes into maintaining all of those supply lines. It's so fucking important. And there's just so much that goes into it, but yeah.
Stake. I quote at the opening of On Democracies and Death Cults this thing I've thought about a lot, which comes up in Tolstoy in War and Peace, which is when the two armies are facing off against each other in the old Napoleonic style, you know, where I'll do this around, they face each other on the battlefield and the order has not yet been issued to advance. And Tolstoy brilliantly describes how every soldier on each side knows that the step they're going to take is not just a step, it's a movement into a totally different realm. And that, you know, that in that case you are from the realm of standing there, uniform polished, on guard, meant to be holding a line, and when from the moment you're one step that way, you're in the place where you'll just have to do anything. And that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in this, because this is the most real. It's why war is so terrible, and also for a writer so fascinating, is because it's that transition from one world to another totally different world.
You're correct about the supply lines, but I don't think it's as unsung as you mentioned. Any documentary about World War II talks about U.S. logistics. I mean that an ordinary civilian has no concept of it, which is why when we talk about like trans people and women in the military, everybody's like, obviously not. It's because in most people's mind, the military is literally just people with rifles shooting at enemy combatants in the front lines. That's it. But there's a billion jobs to fill across all of our branches of the military that people can contribute to.
Seems unfathomable until you're in it.
What have you learned about what wartime does to people?
A lot, but I would say the simplest and most important one is that it shows people, it shows humanity, humankind at its absolute worst, and it also at its absolute best. It's there's nothing comparable to it in human experience that brings out the appallingness of which our species is capable, and the greatness, and sometimes at the same moment.
What greatness have you seen?
An awful lot. I mean, there are some stories I tell in the book, like, there was a young woman I met early in the conflict who had lost her fiancé. He had been at the Nova party in the desert when Hamas attacked at 6:30 in the morning. You know, hundreds and hundreds of young people at a rave. And when Hamas terrorists fired rockets and then drove in on military jeeps and started raping and killing and butchering, he was one of the people that did manage. The young people trying to get into cars and get out were blockaded by Hamas and killed in the cars, and then it caused a backlog of the cars of people trying to escape, and then people were just being killed where they were. There were a couple of other exits from the party, and one this young man found, and he took 4 strangers in his car, drove them to a nearby town called Beersheba, dropped them off, drove back. They begged him not to. He spoke to his girlfriend on the way, and she said, please don't. He went back. He filled up the car with another group of young people from the rave, drives back. He goes back a third time, and on the way back the third time, Hamas killed them all. But this is just...
Dude, there were a couple of crazy stories about people like this. We talked to a... August has the videos, because we interviewed this guy or chatted with him. I think there was a taxi driver who was picking up people from the rave, or any Israelis know about this. I don't remember how they found him initially, or how people found him, but somebody reached out on like on Telegram or WhatsApp, or you know, like, hey, can you pick me up from this place? And at some point, I think he even, because he's either an Arab-looking Israeli, or he might have just been an Arab taxi driver. Actually, he might have just been an Arab taxi driver. We talked to him in Sderot, where he, like, there are Hamas people that like have an Israeli captured, and he's like talking to them, and he convinces them to like release this Israeli to him to like drive this person back to into Israel. No, well, they were in Israel, but I guess away from the festival. And then he like makes multiple trips back because people are like texting this dude to try to like give locations for him to go and pick people up. Anybody know who I'm talking about? What this guy's name was? It was a pretty crazy story. I'm assuming it was, hopefully it was all true. We didn't get bamboozled, but he's a Bedouin guy. Oh, maybe that might have been it. It was an insane story. It was a remarkably insane story. Holy fuck. But they're like people texting this dude, like fields that they're in, like trying to get this guy to find him as he's like in his cab, like trying to pick people up and driving them away. Looking at the Second Lebanon War, Israeli failures were in part because of logistics. Amir Perez, the defense minister, didn't know the situation with supplies. I heard, I think everything about that war was a fucking failure too, right? Like it was also bad OPSEC. Like I think Hezbollah was intercepting communications and stuff because Israeli soldiers were just talking on open lines because they expected the Hezbollah from the first Lebanon war, and they just got, it was not good, I don't think. Which is part of the reasons why I thought that any major confrontation with Hezbollah would be really bad. Again, but Netanyahu proved us all wrong and fucked them up.
Amazing human greatness. There's a friend who I mentioned in the book who has a story that should be much better known. He's a wonderful young man called Nimrod, and he on the morning woke up in his home outside Jerusalem when the sirens were starting to go, the rockets coming in, thousands of rockets from Gaza, and he.
Oh, that sounds right. His name is Rami Davidian. That sounds correct. Ooh, debunking the lies of October 7th witness, Rami Davidian, from the Electronic Intifada, our pro-Pali network. Hold on.
The heroism.
I can only click my Mossad-approved links.
The oldest of his children.
Oh, it's not even him talking. Whatever. It's an interesting story. Look it up.
Was in reserves, being a special forces guy.
Have you seen the El Salvador president saying he won't return mistakenly deported man? No, I think we'll watch that interview with Trump and him next, I think. However, please don't make any mistake. Whether or not that man comes back to the United States, it just depends on whether or not Trump wants him back. That's it. The El Salvadorian president has absolutely no say over that. It all comes down to whether or not the United States wants him back. Please do not confuse that with anything else, okay?
And he was in reserve. He woke up, realized from messages from people in the South how serious it was. Got a call from his commander and his unit in Jerusalem. You're called back. And he said no, we're needed south. And he drove and he picked up a pistol on the way and I think 8 rounds of ammunition.
Wait, is he talking about leader of the Labor Party, Golan? Is it Golan? Is it Yair Golan? We talked to this guy. We interviewed him. I think I showed that on stream. Or no, this guy. He said this guy's dead. Never mind.
In Jerusalem, you're called. He woke up reserves. The rockets come in the morning. Woke up in his own. He's a wonderful young man called Nimrod, and he.
No, never mind.
Being a special forces guy, and he was in reserve. He woke up, realized from messages from people in the South how serious it was.
Did we ever find out what happened with that whole October 7th shit? How did it take the IDF so long to respond? What the fuck? Bro, if I was Israel, I can't believe Netanyahu gets to escape all that bad PR. That's wild. This country is so fucking small. What the fuck?
Got a call from his commander in his unit in Jerusalem. You're called back. And he said,
There's a report released that I linked to you, but you said you didn't want to read it. I don't want to read it. Give me the cliff notes. What happened?
no, we're needed south. And he drove and he picked up a pistol on the way and I think 8 rounds of ammunition. He went past every police checkpoint, security army checkpoint that when it started to go up. He said he didn't see a live body until early hours of the afternoon. But then he engaged the terrorists and he fought with them for the next 48 hours, saved many lives. But on the way, he said to me, he said, I when I got to the junction where there were all these dead bodies lying around of party goers and others, he said, when I got to the motorway junction, I was certain I would not survive that day. And he stopped, he got out of the car and pulled into a ditch and he made a phone. He got on his phone, he made a video for his 2 children. And he said, I wanted them to have a message from me, so that when the phone was found on my body, they'd have something.
Jesus.
And he survived.
That's dark.
And
some of the people were going through, what was it? One lady was trying to find, oh no, or was it somebody found like it was like a dead fiance and they called the husband on the phone and he had to like ID the body of the dead lady. Oof, bro, that situation was kind of messed up. Okay. Kind of messed up. Kind of a messed up situation. A lot of bad stuff going on that day. Just saying.
And I just am filled with admiration for people like that. Amazing. Be very, very lucky in America, Britain, or any other country to produce people like that, but we could. We should.
Wait, what? Explain.
Our country to produce. Amazing. Be very, very lucky in America, Britain, or any other country to produce people like that, but we could.
What? Fuck you. What do you mean? 330 million people? You don't think we could produce? You don't think any of those people exist in America right now? What?
We should.
Explain the title to me again.
On Democracies and Death Cults.
It's currently in between a lot of Easter books.
I showed you Amazon bestseller lists, yes, just before we started. There's an awful lot of, I will explain the title, but yes, it did amuse me that I'm currently battling in the Amazon.com bestseller lists with, I'm currently at number 12, but number 13, sneaking up behind me, is It's Not Easy Being a Bunny, an early reader book for kids, beginner books. You've probably got it. And I'm getting very close to catching up with a great tome you probably know as well, called Hippity Hoppity Little Bunny, finger puppet board book for Easter. Also, Little Blue...
Supposedly, not to take away from anybody, okay, but supposedly it's incredibly easy to become a New York Times bestseller because of the way that they count it or the way that the sections are split. Like, if you're an internet personality and you release a book, you're, like, guaranteed to become a New York Times bestseller. Maybe I need to do this.
Truck Springtime's doing very well. You know, there was a humorist in the UK many years ago who discovered that in the 70s...
A humorist? This is why you guys have no country. A humorist?
Or so, the 3 things that sold books in Britain in those days were anything to do with cats, anything to do with golf, and anything to do with Nazis. So he wrote a book called Golfing for Cats with a cat with a swastika armband on the cover.
How did it do?
Quite well, actually, right. I think, yeah. I'm not sure there's a perfect crossover in the Venn diagram of those readers, but yeah, no, next time I'll call it Democracies and Death Cults and Easter Bunnies.
Well, what was the, this was supposed to be a parody, right? Kind of? Like, of just, like, pop songs? Although this group might make a lot of stuff like this, but this was supposed to be like, oh, you can just do random shit and make a pop song or some shit. But it became, unironically, super popular, over 1 billion views.
No, the title goes to something I had thought about for a long time and which I try to answer in the book, which is what attitude people in free liberal societies, democratic societies that are at peace, can take towards what I call the death cults. I should stress, by the way, that our societies have experienced plenty of death cults in the past. I give the example, there was
You're going to try to get a conversation with this Murray guy? I don't think he would ever be interested in me, but maybe. I need a booker guy, like a person who's dedicated to reaching out to, like, putting together good prompts to reach out to these people.
Spanish philosopher from the last century who was...
When you guys pay back the funding of your independence war against the Brits, France needs money to fund Ukraine. Dude, it would be so fucking epic if Macron were to like try to float that. Oh my God.
Much opposed to the rise of fascism in Spain, Francoism, and a meeting at the university he taught at, the students at one point started chanting "Viva la muerte," long live death. And he said, "This is the moment when this necrophilic utterance. This is the moment when it all goes wrong." So it has happened in the past, but the death cult I'm primarily writing about and talking about in this book is the death cult of Hamas and Islamic jihadists in general. I say that I was at one of the, shortly after the 7th of October when I went to the region, went to Israel first. Yeah. I went to a reunion of some of the survivors of the Nova Party, and one of the young men who'd survived said to me, after showing me his footage from the morning, which was too graphic to go into, but he said, "What would you do if this happened in your country?" And I thought, but I didn't say to him, but it has. It has happened in my country. It happened at the Manchester Arena in 2017. Oof. It happened at the Bataclan Theatre in Paris in 2015. It happened at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando in 2015. It's just that first of all, people sort of don't know what to do about it and try to pass it over. Or it hasn't happened, thank God, hasn't happened.
What is stopping Japan and EU to call on the U.S. debt other than their own destruction? Well, there's no calling on the debt. When you buy treasury bonds, they are paid back in a certain period of time. You can't just say, pay me back sooner, right?
As much.
But they can sell those bonds. They can sell that debt on the open market, which hurts our ability to sell more debt, which is epic and based. And Japan and Canada need to be abusing the fuck out of the U.S. more on it.
But it really, I suppose, it's in part, as well as being a first-hand account of war, the purpose of this book is to try to answer this question that I've tried to answer all my life, which is what attitude you can take and what response you can make to people who have totally different values to yours. Because there has been this presumption, which we both grew up with, which is what we have is what everyone has or wants to have, and we all have the same desires in this life. And some people do, and some people just don't. And some people want to, they want to make the world burn. And some of them want to make other people burn and take as many people as they can with them and much more. And the taunt that Al-Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, the taunt they always have is the same, which is some variation of, we love death more than you love life. And in fact, Hassan Nasrallah, who went to meet his maker last year in Beirut, the head of Hezbollah, he said this for decades. He said, the thing with the infidels is that they love life, and this is their great weakness.
I would be really careful about how you, not to play my Muslim simp card, but this is true of all people that are part of great countries or great movements. There is always going to be some ideal to strive for that is bigger than one man's life. And you can say, all these death cults talk about how we love death more than you love life. But we have a variation of that in America. The give me liberty or give me death, right? I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. Everybody in any great country or that has ever been part of a great power has had an ideology to strive for that's bigger than just life or death. So, you can talk about unique ways that it might play out in some parts of the world or with some groups of people or with some religions, and that's certainly worth talking about. But it would be very naive to pretend that that's some incredibly unique thing to just one, group of people.
And I think that's not the case. But I know for sure, and it's one of the things that this book is about, is that it's not enough to just like life or to enjoy life. If you're going to enjoy life, you also have to be willing to fight for it. And sometimes that's metaphorical, and sometimes it's really not.
A quick note, I partnered with Function because I wanted a smarter and more comprehensive way to understand what's happening inside of my body. Twice a year, Function run lab tests that monitor over 100 biomarkers, and then they've got a team of expert physicians that analyze the data and give you actionable advice to improve your health and lifespan.
That's not what they mean by preferring death, though. That's absolutely what they mean by preferring death. You think that no Muslim extremist group is just like, we just want to die, LOL. Like, you can kill yourself at any time. They all have the ability to, right? Like, that's not impossible.
If you've been feeling a bit sluggish, then your testosterone levels might be the problem. They play a massive role in your energy and your performance.
The specific exaltation of martyrdom is rather unique to Islam, no? Maybe like slightly, but I mean, I think we praise martyrs in our own way. Like, if you have a hero who's sacrificing himself in some way, that's an incredibly common Western movie trope, right? The captain going down with his ship, or some soldier that stays behind to make sure that the others can get away safely. Like, these are very, very common Western tropes as well. There's a romanticism to the idea of somebody giving themselves up for some ideology or for some other group of people or for a family or whatever. It's not unique to Islam. Maybe the religious combination of it makes it a little bit kind of unique, but
being able to see them charted over the course of a year with actionable insights to actually improve them gives you a clear path to making your life better. So, if you have not been performing in the gym or the bedroom the way that you would like, this is an awesome way to work out what's happening inside of your body. Getting these lab tests done would usually...
LOL slightly. I am an ex-Muslim and Destiny has no idea what he's talking about. No offense, but if you ever want to know anything about Islam, you'd never, ever, ever talk to ex-Muslims because you guys are the most unhinged about it, and literally every single part of your life is just defined by how much you fucking hate Islam, okay? No offense, but that is... Like, this one guy, I thought he's a cool dude. I have nothing wrong with him personally. But like, anytime you have somebody that identifies themselves as like ex-Muslim, like even that the apostate prophet dude, who is a cool dude or whatever, but this guy's like he's like an AFD simp. Will this party save Germany and Europe? Interviewing AFD leader Beatrix von Storch. Like, listen, I love you, I respect you, I love all people, okay?
Cost thousands, but with Function it is only $500. And right now you can get the exact same blood panels that I get and bypass their waitlist by going to the link in the description below or heading to functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. That's functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. Been pretty fascinated by the reaction online over the last, I think, with the Ukraine, with the Middle East, with sort of a broader conversation about the Jewish community at large, generally. I wonder how much Elon's opening up of X has contributed to outgroup tribalism now that maybe some of the guardrails have been taken off with regards to that.
Not the guardrails.
Yeah, it feels to me like the world has reached some new fever pitch of sort of outgroup passion against whoever they see as a scapegoat, whoever they see as being in the wrong. And nobody can agree on who is in the wrong, which is one of the most sort of interesting observations, that everybody acts as if the facts are already settled, whilst never being able to actually agree on what the facts are. So
the difference is that Islam is willing to sacrifice their own young children for their religion. Yes, Christians used to do this, but the point is that secularism has domesticated Christians. I mean, I agree with that. Like, there are cringe Muslims. ISIS, I would say, was ultra cringe. Al-Qaeda was pretty cringe. Like, these are two very, very, very cringe groups of Muslims. I'm not going to deny that, of course. But, like, when I did confirmation and we had to pick saints, you know, to have your, you know, what you want your saint name to be. Bro, some of these early Christians that people suck off in the church are like, this woman was so holy, she watched as all 4 of her children were burned alive, and she didn't denounce God, even as her child's screams filled the hall. It's like, holy shit. Are you okay? I don't know, man. Christianity is definitely secularized quite a bit, for sure. But so have a lot of Muslims. It really depends on the country they're into. This is why I also like painting with a broad brush is kind of weird. Like, Muslims in fucking Riyadh, Muslims in fucking Saudi Arabia are not the same as like the Houthis or ISIS or or Al Qaeda or any of that. Like, it's differences in people. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Don't paint with a broad brush.
I say they're settled. You say they're settled. We don't agree, but both of us act as if they are. And I just the reaction, especially in the West, to a rapidly developing kinetic situation on the other side of the planet. And
well, I mean, I think I've said to you before, I mean, one of the things I noticed in the internet age was that we'd gone from the era of we disagree about our opinions or our interpretations of an event, and then, well, the internet age has given us the great things of we disagree about what just happened. And that does throw up its own manias. So one of the reasons I try to see things with my own eyes is because I'm always pretty confident that someone's going to try to tell me I haven't seen something I've seen with my own eyes. And sure enough, that happens all the time. But you have the reassurance if you know.
How's that?
You know.
True.
And but I do find that interesting. There are, for instance, I mean, there are people who would like to regard themselves as civilized people, I'm sure, who just will not accept that what happened on October the 7th happened, which was one of the reasons why I went there straight away, was because I knew that would happen.
When did you get there?
I got there in
What
October.
saint did you choose? I just chose St. Stephen because he had the same name as me. And I don't want him to memorize any different shit. I don't even remember what he did.
Of 2023, I went because I was in Times Square the day after the massacre, as it was still going on. And there was an anti-Israel, pro-Hamas protest happening in the center of Times Square with people supporting the massacre. And I thought, well, this is one of the things that's going to happen is they're going to pass over the massacre. They're going to celebrate it and pass it over. They're going to pretend it didn't happen or try to diminish it or minimize it. And I just didn't want to see that happen. Is what many people said. It was like watching Holocaust denial in real time. And yes, I mean, and in the other main conflict going on at the moment in Russia, Ukraine, you know, I mean, at the highest level of the American government, there have been people who've implied that, you know, Ukraine started the war or is the aggressor. And that's disturbing to see, because there are some things that just have to be agreed upon.
Highest levels of government. That was an interesting way to avoid saying Donald Trump.
You know, it was Russian tanks that rolled into Ukraine in February 2022. It was Hamas terrorists who invaded by the thousands into Israel on October the 7th, 2023. Like, let's at least agree to that. As what you describe as the sort of the online thing is definitely massively worsened, and I think it's because, I mean, the sort of all the sluices are up, all of the guardrails, all of that, and that's good in lots of ways. I mean, look at what happened when our societies tried to say there's only one explanation for instance,
COVID,
the COVID virus coming out of the area where that virus was being made, and that it was to do with Chinese people eating bats and from a wet market, and not to do with the lab that was making that virus happening.
Listen, I just want to say, okay, if you watch this movie, there's a movie called Contagion, okay? This movie is like a 3 out of 10 cringe movie because it's very obvious that they're trying very, very, very hard to like give plausible cover to the COVID-19 shit, right? Because it's like a wet market bat that drops some shit and a woman gets sick and there's guys selling fake meds, right? It's insanely cringe how over the top they try to like play up the COVID-19 like parallels until you realize this movie came out in 2011, okay? This movie, like every single aspect of this film, it completely mirrors and maps onto 100% the way that everything happened with COVID-19. It's actually so fucking cringe. That people are like, well, what are the chances that the virus happened to come from the exact area where they have labs studying these viruses? Like, I've noticed a suspicious amount of children seem to be dying in these places called hospitals where they're supposed to be curing children. Anybody notice that? Like, yeah, no fucking shit, Sherlock. Like, Jesus, what do you think they built these fucking labs at? Hello?
To be leaky. We were told consistently that the lab leak was a conspiracy. And one of the reasons why that's so poisonous to the discourse as a whole is because it understandably makes people say, if I've been lied to about that, what are the other things that are true? What are the other conspiracy theories that...
Yeah, I'm still waiting to die for my boosters, by the way. How long until that happens? It should be any day now, right? Everybody that's boosted should be dying pretty soon, I think.
Are not conspiracy theory.
It becomes a gateway drug.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are on that. And then, of course, it's a great habit and it's a kind of enjoyable. And people like believe everything's being kept from them. And doubtless some stuff is being kept from us, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes not. But I think the conspiratorial mindset is...
I need to move all this
flourishing.
up.
Flourishing.
Oh, God.
At the moment. And it's funny because you can well, it's funny, but it's also more importantly, it's serious because it's a sign of a very unhealthy thing in society. When the JFK files were released the other week, there was a lot of excitement that, you know, finally we're going to discover exactly what happened. And I wrote a column a while after saying, the thing we've learned from the JFK files is that the president was shot by Lee Harvey Oswald with the gun that Lee Harvey Oswald owned, that Mrs. Lee Harvey Oswald noticed was missing from the house that morning.
Pretty boring.
And
this guy believes in the COVID lab leak thing being 100% true, but he doesn't believe in the JFK? That's like the most common conspiracy that everybody believes in. Wait, what?
Because it was funny, because I noticed that, to the extent that I monitor reactions to anything I say, I noticed how many people were annoyed. No, there's still this question. He wasn't as good a sharpshooter as you can't stop it. It looks, by the way, on that one, it's quite interesting. It looks like what happened was the CIA were monitoring him pretty carefully, Lee Harvey Oswald, because he tried to defect to Russia once before, and he tried to defect to Cuba, and so the CIA were monitoring him, and they didn't want to reveal the methods by which they did that. In the process, one of the biggest conspiracy theories of the modern era was born. But I don't think I'll persuade anyone who thinks otherwise on that, who's deeply into the idea that LBJ desperately wanted to do this or X wants to do that. And the problem is what you allude to, is that the problem is that the algorithm rewards the crazy. I noticed on the day that the JFK files were released, some wank rag online started a live stream that was suggested to me, and its title was JFK Files Reveal Israeli.
Oh, because like in one fucking page of all the shit that came out, in one page, there's a reference to the Mossad, I think one time, out of like the hundreds or thousands of pages that came out. I'd be like, that's it right there. There they are. Why has everyone just accepted that the lab leak theory ended up being true? Did I miss something that made it true all of a sudden? There's like 3 or 4 different intelligence agencies have come out and have said that they're updating their current assessment with like low probability that it came from a lab. But all of them also say that they're just going by information that was released by 2 years ago. As far as I understand, nothing new has come out, and all of the studies still point to the origination being from the wet market. I don't know if we'll ever know 100%. Like, I wouldn't bet my life on that. But my understanding is that's still where all the research is pointing towards, is it coming out of the wet market. I don't think anything new has come out to change that.
Plot or something. And there was no such thing. But that gets engagement.
I'm engaged.
Whereas JFK scholars reading documents live, it'll take about 4 months.
Less sexy.
Less engagement. You're not going to watch them reading the documents. And, that's just the reality of the era we're in. And you can't stop it, but I think people should be alive to it, should be aware of it. This is one of the things that's being done to us by these darn devices that tell me all about Easter Bunny books.
It seems like the sort of scapegoat, out-group, finger-pointing dynamic, it feels like that has been tuned up, at least over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and as I say in this book, I mean, it's inevitable because historically we know this is the case. And I say this to somebody who isn't Jewish, but it will almost always end up with the Jews.
Why is that the case?
They just are easy group of people to hate.
One is that right and left can both do it.
Base.
Oh, it's like a equal opportunity victim.
Yes.
Right.
Both right and left can do it. I say at one point in the book, one of the interesting things about anti-Semitism is that it's, which isn't to say that all criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic, which isn't, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that one of the interesting things about anti-Semitism is that it's famously a shape-shifting virus. It can come from anywhere. It can come from the political left. It can come from the political right. It can come from people wearing jack boots, and it can come from people wearing COVID masks. Latterly, we've been less attuned to the existence of the second, because there's always this expectation that it'll be the same as last time, but it doesn't. It moves. But the reason why I do think that that's a perennial to the conspiracy mind is because the Jews can be blamed for everything, and just have been historically. They get blamed for, you get simultaneously blamed for being poor and for being rich. 19th century British anti-Semitism and indeed continental anti-Semitism relied on the trope of the Rothschilds and of the impoverished Jews from Eastern Europe. And they just did both at once. They can be accused of being very religious and trying to push religion, and also being ultra-secularist, the most secular, pushing atheism. They can be blamed for being stateless, rootless cosmopolitans was the line that the anti-Semites of the right used to use, and left, about Jews. And now they get blamed for having a state. So it's a sort of perennial. And I think if you want to go down exactly why it is, it's many reasons. There's different types of anti-Semitism. There's Islamic anti-Semitism. There's types of Christian anti-Semitism. I think that it ends up usually being that historically Jews are almost perfectly positioned to mirror whatever your own failings are. And this is it's a line I quote in the book from a great Russian writer, Vasily Grossman, who said in the 20th century in his masterpiece Life and Fate, he said, "Tell me what you accuse the Jews of and I'll tell you what you're guilty of." It's fascinating insight.
Damn,
This.
too much
It's a mirror to
circumcision.
your own failings.
How so?
So, for instance, the main accusation that the revolutionary Islamic government in Tehran uses of the Jewish state of Israel is that it's a colonial power, this is quite funny to me because, I mean, by the way, the supreme leader of Iran last year wrote a thank you letter to students at Columbia and other American Ivy League universities for coming out for the last year and a half on anti-Israel protests. He wrote them a thank you letter and joining him in the anti-colonialist cause. There is one country in the Middle East which has been colonizing the place more than any other in our lifetimes, and that's the Iranian revolutionary government in Tehran. They colonized the great country of Iran in 1979. They've, in the years and decades since, they've colonized Iraq, colonized Syria, colonized Yemen, colonized and destroyed Lebanon. But they say the Jews are the colonialist power. Another very good example, just right there. The president of Turkey, a sometime very close enemy of mine, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who initiated a defamatory poetry competition against many years ago. That's a byway.
You have friends in high places.
I do. And then good enemies, the best. The Recep Tayyip Erdogan, President Erdogan of Turkey, accuses the Jewish state of being an occupying power, which is hilarious if you know Cyprus at all. Because the north half of Cyprus is occupied by Turkey.
True.
Now, still, has been for 50 years. Totally illegal occupation that nobody in America or Britain or the West seems to give a damn about. So when Erdogan says the Jews are occupiers, all he's doing is telling us about himself. That's all. And it works every which way you do it. The Nazis accused the Jews of being racists. It's almost as if it tells us something about the Nazis. It's an extraordinary thing. And this works almost every way.
Wow.
Yeah, people accuse the Jews of things they're guilty of. And because they're a small enough portion of the global population and tend to outperform, not always by any means, but tend to outperform in the areas they go into, they're almost the perfect scapegoat.
Is this not true of other groups too?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Never anywhere as much because of this shape-shifting thing I described. And because there are very deep theological reasons for it. You know, it took until the 1950s for a pope in Rome to say the Jews are not responsible for the killing of Christ. That's a long time.
Well, I mean,
for the church to confirm that. So, you know, you have many centuries of Christian anti-Semitic pogroms and much more. The Islamic world has not yet caught up with that, and much of it still blames the Jews for rejecting the revelation of Muhammad, because when the inventor of Islam came up with the idea and went around trying to get other people to join him, the Jews were among the first people who said, no, thanks, we've already got our religion and we'd like to keep it.
What are the lessons for the wider world from the Ukraine, from the Middle East over the last few years? What should people take away from the way that these sort of conflicts have unfolded and the response? Because it seems, and a lot of people sort of say this, ever-escalating kinetic engagement, it's the sort of burbling below the surface. You mentioned before about the only job of the politicians in government is to keep the economy going. There's maybe some fertile ground to sow seeds in with regards to that, which is going to raise tensions.
Say more?
I watched a video from the PM of Singapore, who, as far as I can tell, I'm sure there's critics of Singapore out there, and I'm not a geopolitics expert. As far as I can tell, Singapore's kind of a shining light of some areas of growth, governance.
Oh, for sure, of economics, for sure.
And he said himself, you know, that economic turbulence like this has preceded a lot of pretty big conflicts in the past. And if you've got a few petri dish examples of this actually happening before you've got the economic pressure happening as well, globally, you know, the era of free trade is over, you know.
Could be, yeah.
We'll get back to talking to Sahil in 1 minute, but first I need to tell you about Nomadic.
Tell me.
Traveling should be about the pleasure of the trip and not the stress of packing, which is why I am such a huge fan of Nomadic. This travel pack, the 14-litre travel pack, is what I wear every single day. It is the biggest game changer, and it genuinely makes spending your day lugging your possessions around infinitely more enjoyable. They've got compartments for everything: your laptop, your shoes, your sunglasses. So well organized that even your toothbrush will feel important. It's like the Marie Kondo of luggage. Everything has got its place. And if you're still on the fence, their products have got a lifetime guarantee, so this is the last backpack you'll ever need to buy. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can buy it, throw your possessions in it, and if you don't like it, they'll give you your money back. Right now, you can get a 20% discount off everything from Nomadic by going to the link in the description below or heading to nomadic.com/modernwisdom. And they ship internationally. That's nomadic.com/
Do you think they'll be impacted by tariffs?
Modern wisdom.
Why does he throw everything that he gets sponsored by? The fuck?
What should everybody keep in mind, given what you've seen from the front lines of the two most recent?
I don't know. I mean, I'm very wary about using other people's tragedies as mere sort of learning, points. But I can tell you the few sort of positive things that I have picked up. And one is a very straightforward one, which I think is a very important one for the West, which I go into in this book, which is, because I mentioned, it's about these twin worlds. And how does the democracy, whether you're Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter, Labour, Conservative, doesn't matter. But what can anyone who, broadly speaking, likes the societies we're from and wants them to continue and wants them to do well, what can they do if those societies are tested? And I think one of the things that is really very obvious to me now is
what?
You need to know what you're fighting for. You need to know that.
Why didn't Asians ever seem to fall in this Jew-hating thing that the rest of the world struggles with? I don't know. Do Jews live in Asia anywhere? Not the Russian part.
What you're fighting for is something that you cherish and you love. And I think that there has been, in the period of de-energizing, which hopefully we're coming out of, but in that period, we have all been told in America and Britain and elsewhere that what we have is not good.
There are Jews in
As I said
India?
in my last book, in The War on the West, we have been told that, we're guilty. I mean, this is all horseshit, by the way.
True.
But I mean, that we're uniquely guilty from colonialism, or uniquely guilty from slavery, or uniquely guilty from racism,
That's
or all
bullshit.
of this stuff. It's total horseshit. We should never have put up with it for so long. That, among other things, people from around the world wanted to come to countries in the West and then tell us how bad we were. Should never have agreed to that. Somebody came into my home and said they didn't like my home.
Yes, the home
and they
analogies.
thought it was uniquely awful. I think I'd tell them to scram. So
out of
why
here,
we put up
Buster.
with this for so long, I don't know. But we have been, and arguably many young people in particular, younger than us, have been told that what they have been born into is not good. And one of my first instincts when I saw that poll of young Americans and young Brits, would you be willing to lay down your life for the country if something terrible happened and you had to step up? I think one of the reasons why the yes vote is so low is because it doesn't matter whether you're patriotic or not. You've been told your country's rotten. There was an article written in the Daily Mail the other week by a very smart young British guy who's right wing. I think he's a sort of reform voter type, saying, "Why would I lay down my life for my country when it's let me down so badly? When our politicians don't listen to us." So it's not just a left-right thing by any means. But I think people have been told from a lot of different directions that our countries are not good, and I think that's not true. I never thought.
Should you look at our conservative at all? They seem genuinely split on the deportation mistake. The comments in favor of it are mind-numbing. Why? Because he was a criminal anyway or something? Some stupid shit like that?
Thought that was true. I've got a long enough memory and I've traveled enough, run up enough air miles in this life to know that's not true. But if you tell people that it's the case for a long time, and you de-energize them, you demotivate them, you tell them that they're rotten, then yeah, you can really demoralize a society. I think that needs to turn around. I think that people need to recognize what we have that's good. And as I've said to you before, the footfall alone tells us all we need to know. The footfall alone tells it. Nobody is trying today to make their way out of America to get to the safe harbor of Venezuela. Nobody's even leaving Britain to go to France. Wow. Certainly nobody's leaving France or Spain or Italy to try to get to Algeria.
So deep, true.
And in turn, nobody from Algeria is trying to break into sub-Saharan Africa. Very few people are trying to break into communist China. Absolutely no one is trying to hot-foot it to North Korea. Okay, so like all of the countries that people in the world most want to come to are now what they have been for decades. America, Canada, Australia, Britain, France, and so on. So why did we put up with being told that these countries that are demonstrably the places people want to come to are bad places and everywhere else is good?
Yeah, guys.
It's just so sickening to me. I've had enough of it, and I think most people have.
Is that sense that things would be better if we were more like them over there? Is that a dynamic that's sort of fueling some of this?
Which bit do you mean?
The fact that if only we were a little bit more like, well, the Middle East, they're living a little bit sort of closer to simplicity. They have,
yeah. That's the real colonialist thinking. That's the real Orientalist thinking of our time. Is the idea that it's actually rather wonderfully sent up in White Lotus, among other things. Is that stupid idea that other cultures have like a depth of philosophy that we don't have, or other cultures have a spiritualism that we don't have. I mean, it's a phenomenon I've described before of people going backpacking to see temples in Thailand. Wonderful things, absolutely. Going to Myanmar to see temples, wonderful things to see, absolutely. But you should also visit Winchester Cathedral or Salisbury or St. Peter's in Rome or Chartres, on and on and on. It's a very interesting mindset that the Western mindset is that what we have isn't rich enough. I described this recently at ARC. I borrowed Eric Weinstein's great analogy about
oh God,
ice cream. Have you heard this?
Red flag.
It was a brilliant observation. Some years ago, Eric and I were talking about this weird thing where the West had been sort of tricked into thinking, or we'd been sort of told that we need other flavors to make ourselves interesting, because otherwise we're not interesting. You'll notice, by the way, that doesn't work any other way around. Nobody goes to Ghana and says, I just can't help noticing you don't have enough Welsh people. And you can really do with it, because it'll bring you some color, some much needed diversity. Nobody would think of going to Pakistan and saying, guys, you seriously, you just don't have enough French culture here. But you do it always with the West. You do it always. And Eric's observation, which I thought was just brilliant, that classic way he can do to sort of refine a complicated question. He said, Douglas, when I was growing up, I had the impression for a while that vanilla ice cream was the base ice cream. It was like the base flavor. And that all other flavors of ice cream were flavors added onto vanilla ice cream. And it's the same with us in the West. Vanilla, if you want to look at it like that, is a very complicated and rich flavor of its own. It's not the case that everything added to it is being added to a non-flavor.
Man, this analogy, we got it. All right, true.
I wish we realized that. I wish we had a little bit more. I always say I never want I don't tub thumping nationalist stuff, but I would like people to have some darn pride in things they should have some darn pride in.
How have you avoided becoming, or maybe you have, more nihilistic, despondent, down? I'm interested in what the sort of personal prices that you pay to be on the front lines of these things. I've seen an interview with you and Piers Morgan where there was a brief interlude for a rocket to go overhead, and then you sort of brush yourself off and kind of got back to it. I'm interested in sort of what it's been like for you over the last couple of years.
Not really for me to say. I think it goes back to that point about seeing things at their best and at their worst at the same time. I can't deny that when you see some things too much, too close up, it has some kind of effect on you. I describe some of that in this book, actually, but it's countered by the encouragement one gets. I don't mean encouragement for other people. I mean literally seeing people who are encouraging to me in their actions. And there have been in both conflicts. I spent more time in the Israel-Gaza conflict than in Ukraine, but I was very struck near the beginning of the Ukraine conflict when I was with Ukrainian armed forces when they retook Kherson from the Russians, and all these unbelievable sight. All these people coming out from their houses after 8 months under Putin-esque rule, being liberated by their own army, and
Putin-esque?
unbelievable scenes and conversations and sights, and I find real heroism on the battlefield a remarkable thing. I mean, unbelievably encouraging and positive. I like and feel enormous encouragement from seeing people fighting for life. I think it's
beautiful,
almost unequaled as a thing to make you feel optimism about the species, and particularly fighting for life against people who worship death. The
death cultists.
I tell a story in this book which is slightly difficult story to retell, actually, but the mastermind of October the 7th, Yahya Sinwar, who was a proper psychopath. I mean, as you'll see when the segment's about him, I mean, a proper psychopath, you know, who was in an Israeli prison in the 2000s for strangling to death various Palestinians who he had fallen out with, you know. Anyway, he had such necrophilic fantasies as a man, you know, promised even before the 7th of October. He said, we will go over and we will get the Jews and we will tear their hearts out of their bodies. In the end, he was killed by a young soldier from a regiment called the Bislach, who aren't even fully soldiers. And this young man who killed Sinwar within less than a year of the 7th of October was not even in uniform when Sinwar invaded. And I went into Rafah just after Sinwar was killed, and I went to see where he was, and was with the unit that included the men who killed him. And I thought, what an extraordinary and wonderful thing that this man, high on death, finally had death delivered to him by someone who wasn't even in uniform.
Some part-time squaddy.
He created his own downfall.
Wow.
And that sort of thing, I mean, I think that, you know, we all know there are different ways and different philosophies and different theological systems to look at the battle between good and evil. But that one is a very clear one to me. And yes, I've got far more optimism, actually, funnily enough, than I have pessimism, despite everything.
Does it make dealing with criticisms or accusations of motive or whatever from the internet, does it put those sort of things into perspective?
I never gave a shit about that, as you know.
I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by how few shits you give.
Yeah.
I always have been.
I just don't care. You know, I was saying to somebody recently that I slightly wonder what would happen if I'd have grown up in the social media era, and I have, you know, friends and
felt more of that sort of surveillance.
But I think the truth is simply that I think that people's sense of whether you're going right or wrong in your life or your career and your whatever, who takes advice from complete strangers? True. And don't we all, I'm sure you as with me, you listen to advice or criticism even from people who care for you and you care for.
True.
Or love and, you know, who love you, who you admire and who admire you.
And who have your best interest.
I mean, I reckon, without getting all schmaltzy, I reckon that if you said to me,
would you or have you been offered the opportunity to go on the Modern Wisdom podcast? Yeah, I think I've talked to Chris 2 or 3 times.
I saw this interview you did, and I think you shouldn't have said that, or whatever. I would actually listen to that. Because, you know, there are some people who I respect, whose opinion I think, yeah, that matters. But if you were, you know, just some rando online saying, so why the hell would that, you know, I think I've said to you before that one of the interesting things is, of course, is because the very nature of criticism is that you have to work out, I think I said this when we first spoke, you have to work out whether the person criticizing you is criticizing you to improve you or to demoralize and destroy you.
True.
And the friendly critic, so I'm saying, like, I'd like to think of the same thing if I said, you know, I would just think, you know, you might think, I wouldn't be saying something critical of you other than if I thought it would improve you in some way or make something better for you. But if I was some malevolent troll who desperately wanted to destroy Chris Williamson, hated him and wanted him to fail, and I like started screaming advice at you, well, why the hell would you listen? You shouldn't. But I mean, you know, you definitely have an advantage if you grew up before the deranging and online era, because I think some of that sense is created from that. But I mean, you know, it's. I don't think it's a difficult superpower to acquire. I really don't.
Yeah, as said, everybody that is fantastic at something that comes naturally to them.
What do you mean?
Well, just I think you seem to have a big fuck you streak, and Ryan Long told me this, a comedian. He said he always.
Oh, I like him. I did his podcast.
Yes, I introduced him. Yeah, he's great. Him and Danny. He said he always sort of discredited the things that came easily to him. He always assumed that there was more value in something that he had to work harder at. So he's really great at sketch comedy.
Yes.
And
he's naturally very funny.
He's fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
And to him, sketches just, they fall out of him on a daily basis. So he always looked at other twists and art forms. Maybe they were comedy or maybe they were tangential or maybe they were totally separate. And he always assumed that those were the ones that were really valuable because he discredited the thing that came so easily to him. He always thought, well, the sketch comedy thing, like, you know, everybody's got access. He said, no. Not everybody has access to that.
Yeah.
You're a freak. And you have that skill. So
do you have something like that?
Things that come easily to me?
Yeah.
We're always, at least for me, I'm my own worst critic. Stuff that comes easily to me that I think other people assume that that's the case is networking. That was something that, as an only child who then becomes a club promoter, you're perfectly positioned to sort of observe social networks and see how they go. It's never anything that I've sort of practiced myself. It's just something that kind of came out of life and programming. And yapping. always been good at yapping, from a kid.
Right. But so do you think you look down on those things as skills?
I don't look down on them, but I do assume because they come easily to me, I'm not convinced that I value them in the same sort of way. I value them in myself, and it's something I'm very happy that I've got. But
so what are the things then that you put an onus on that you don't think you have?
Oh, that's a good question. Fuck you energy would be one of those. Yeah. Instead of getting mad, I tend to get sad. I'll sort of turn. I know. Yeah.
Oh,
it's true. It's true.
Really?
Yeah, in many ways, I think you can work past that quite easily.
Interesting.
Or at least operationally, you can. But there is an initial hurdle where I will tend to blame myself for something. So it's one of the reasons I asked about the criticism. Actually, I would say I'm a criticism hyper responder sometimes. Ooh. And I created a list of different ways that me and perhaps other people have dealt with criticism with varying degrees of success.
Oh yeah.
Get bitter. Think of any critic as a hater, just throwing envy and shade. Recite the quote, "Don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from." Number 2, channel your inner David Goggins and use it as fuel to prove people wrong. Number 3, get equanimous and see every criticism as a gift which you can learn from. Number 4, get psychoanalytical and think of criticism as a window into the mind of other humans. Bonus points for inferring sweeping generalizations about the public at large from whatever you read.
That's very good.
Be incredibly precise with language, so no spare words which could be misconstrued or present. Front-run potential criticisms by caveating before speaking. Hey, I'm just an idiot spitballing a bro science theory here.
That one's awful.
Acknowledge both sides. Hey, look, I think climate change or women's mental health or poverty in Africa is an important issue we should focus on. But
that's a weak one.
Avoid exposing yourself to it. Never search your own name on Twitter or Reddit. Don't read the comments.
Oh, that's definitely true. Yes, of course.
Dampen down the edginess of your opinions and statements so the point gets made, but in such a gentle way that people can't find anything sufficiently objectionable to get mad about.
That's not great advice always.
This isn't necessarily advice. These are just strategies that I've gone through.
Interesting.
Deny that it gets to you and just breathwork, busy, meditate, scroll, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu your way to distraction. Or, final one, take it to heart, doubt your abilities, and fear that you're not cut out for any level of exposure at large.
I think that it's probably the last one, which a lot of people online would be hoping with anyone they're attacking to be able to
slow them down.
What they're hoping is that they'll do something that will demoralize you and imagine. I mean, I know that when I really want to demoralize someone, that's
okay.